Have you ever wondered what happens inside the mind of someone who spent years running from connection? What goes through their head the exact moment they realize the one person who truly saw them is never coming back? Let me paint this picture for you. It does not happen the way you would expect. There is no explosion, no dramatic collapse, no screaming into the void. It comes quietly, softly, the way a bullet enters without making a sound. They wake up one ordinary morning. The sun is doing what it always does. Coffee is brewing. The world is moving forward. And without thinking, they reach for their phone. Their fingers move with muscle memory. They expect to see your name sitting there at the top of their screen. A good morning text, a small check-in, something that says, "I am still here." But it's not there. The notification bar is empty. The silence is loud. And in that silence, something shifts. That is when it happens. That is when the armor they built over years of protecting themselves from exactly this moment meets the one thing they cannot avoid: reality. You see, this person spent their entire life convincing themselves that needing someone was weakness, that opening up was a trap, that if they just kept enough distance, if they just stayed detached enough, they could never be hurt the way they were hurt before. They perfected the art of leaving before they could be left. They mastered the skill of switching off before anyone could switch them off first. And it worked. For a while, it worked beautifully. But here is what they never prepared for. They never prepared for the moment when the person on the other side stops waiting. When the one person who had the patience to weather their silence, the strength to hold space for their distance, the love to stay even when they were given nothing in return, finally decides that love without reciprocation is no longer enough. And that is what hits them in that quiet moment. Not the loss of you, but the loss of what you represented. The loss of being chosen. The loss of mattering to someone who had no reason to stay except that they wanted to. See, you were not just another person to them. You were proof that they were worthy of someone's time. You were validation that they mattered. You were the one person who made them believe even for a moment that maybe they were not as broken as they thought. That maybe, just maybe, they could be loved without having to earn it through perfection. And now that is gone. But here is what I need you to understand. This is not about them anymore. This is about you. Because what you are about to discover in this video is something they will only learn when it is far too late. Something that sits at the very core of human psychology. Something that separates those who live with regret from those who live with peace. And I'm going to share it with you completely, but only if you stay until the end. Because what I am about to reveal next will reframe everything you just experienced. It will explain why they did what they did. It will give you the clarity you have been searching for, and it will show you exactly why their loss of you is their greatest regret, even if they never have the courage to admit it. So do not click away. Do not skip forward. Whatever pain you are carrying right now, whatever confusion kept you awake at night, whatever question has been burning in your chest since they walked away, this video holds your answer. And I promise you what you are about to see will give you something more valuable than closure. It will give you freedom. Now let us continue. Because the moment I just described that is only the beginning. That is just the arrival of a truth they spent years running from. And what comes next? That is where their world truly starts to fall apart. What do they do when that first wave of pain crashes into them? When the ground beneath their carefully constructed world starts to shake, they do what they have always done. They run not away from you this time, but away from themselves, away from the feeling that is clawing at their chest, away from the truth that is knocking on their door. Their first instinct is to kill the feeling before it can take root. And the way they do that, they attack the memory of you. Watch what happens inside their mind. It is almost surgical in how it unfolds. They begin to replay the moments you disappointed them, the times you asked for something they could not give, the arguments that left them feeling unseen. They take these fragments, these ordinary moments that every relationship contains, and they build a case. A case against you, a case that proves you were never good enough. A case that justifies everything they did. This is why I left. This is why it could never work. They say it to themselves so many times, it starts to feel like truth. And here is what is happening psychologically. Their brain is doing what human brains are wired to do. It is protecting them from emotional pain by converting it into logic. Pain becomes a problem. The problem becomes a project, and the project becomes their shield. Because as long as they are busy analyzing what went wrong, they do not have to feel how much they miss you. Denial is not ignorance. Denial is a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice made by someone who knows somewhere deep down that feeling this would destroy them. And that is exactly what makes it so powerful. You see, for someone who built their entire identity around being unbothered, around being untouchable, around never needing anyone, admitting that they miss you would be like admitting their whole life was a lie. It would mean acknowledging that the armor they wore was not protection. It was a prison. And the key to that prison, that key was you. So they choose the lie that they are better off, the lie that they are stronger without you, the lie that walking away was the smart choice, not the fearful one. They surround themselves with evidence of your flaws while conveniently forgetting every moment you showed up. They remember the arguments and erase the apologies. They hold on to your worst days while discarding your best ones. This is the cruel mathematics of someone trapped in denial. And the tragedy, they do not even realize they are doing it. To them, this feels like healing. It feels like growth. It feels like moving on. But it is not any of those things. It is armor getting heavier. It is walls getting thicker. It is loneliness wearing the mask of strength. But here is what you must hold on to in this moment. This denial, it is not a sign that you were wrong to love them. It is a sign of exactly how much they cannot handle what they lost. The bigger the denial, the deeper the wound they are running from. Because only someone who truly lost something they cannot replace would need to construct an entire false reality just to survive the loss. The person who can walk away and feel nothing, that person never loved at all. But the person who must lie to themselves about what they lost, that person loved you with everything they had. They just could not let you see it. And as this wave of denial crashes over them, something else is building beneath the surface. Something they cannot control. Something that will eventually break through every wall they built. And that is exactly what we are going to uncover next. Because the truth about denial is this. It works for a while, but it cannot work forever. And when it stops working, that is when the real pain arrives. Now, I want you to understand something that will change how you see everything that happened. What you experienced was not cruelty. It was not indifference. It was not proof that you did not matter. What you experienced was fear wearing a mask. And if you can understand what is underneath that mask, you will stop blaming yourself forever. Here is what most people never tell you about avoidance. It is not a personality type. It is not a permanent character trait. It is armor. And armor is always built in response to a wound. Think about that for a second. Every avoidant person walking this earth did not wake up one day and decide to be unreachable. They learned it. They trained themselves into it. They were shaped into it by experiences that taught them one devastating truth. That truth is this. Opening your heart is dangerous. Being close to someone means being able to lose them. And losing someone you let yourself love. That is the most painful experience a human being can go through. So they made a choice. A choice made in childhood. A choice made in the moments when their needs were dismissed or their vulnerability was punished. They looked at the world and they concluded something that felt absolutely true in that moment. Better to never let anyone in than to risk letting them leave. That is the foundation. That is the bedrock. Everything else they built on top of it is just an elaborate system designed to prove that belief true. They taught themselves to feel less so they could not be hurt more. They learned to pull away before anyone could get close enough to leave. They mastered the art of being alone in a relationship. They became experts at intimacy without actually being intimate. And here is what you need to understand about this pattern. It works in their mind. It works perfectly because every time they pull away and nothing catastrophic happens, they confirm their belief. Every time they push someone out and survive, they prove that connection is optional. Every time they choose distance over depth, they tell themselves they are in control. But the cost is a life spent feeling alone in a crowded room. The cost is a heart that beats but never fully feels. The cost is a lifetime of almost connections and almost love and almost enough. And then you came along. You were the crack in their system. You were the one person who did not run when the distance showed up, who did not flinch when the walls went up, who stayed patient when patience should have run out long ago. You saw through the performance because you were paying attention. You recognized the fear because you have felt fear too. You held space for the silence because you understood that silence is not emptiness. Silence is a person trying to protect a wound that never healed. And that is exactly what made you dangerous to their entire system. Not because you were perfect, but because you were consistent. Because you showed them day after day that maybe the belief they built their life on was wrong. That maybe closeness does not always end in catastrophe. That maybe, just maybe, someone could see all of them and still choose to stay. For a moment, they let themselves believe it. And that belief terrified them more than anything ever has. Because if they let themselves love you fully and then lost you, that would mean the wound they have been protecting their whole life could actually be reopened. That all that armor, all those years of building walls, all that distance they created would have been for nothing. So they chose the known pain of leaving over the terrifying possibility of staying and being destroyed. And that decision tells you everything about them and nothing about you. You were not too much. You were not too demanding. You were not asking for something impossible. You were simply asking for the one thing they could not give, the one thing their fear would never let them risk. But here is what I want you to hold on to with everything you have. Understanding why they ran does not mean you needed to wait for them to learn how to stay. Knowing their pain does not mean you were responsible for fixing it. Recognizing their fear does not mean you should have stayed to carry it. You are not a rehabilitation center for someone else's trauma. You are not a practice round for someone who is not ready to play for real. You are a whole person who deserves a whole love. And the moment you truly accept that, that is the moment their avoidance stops defining your worth entirely. There is something I need you to see clearly. Because somewhere in the wreckage of what happened, you started to believe that you were replaceable, that what you offered was ordinary, that anyone could have done what you did. That lie has been eating at you from the inside, and it has got to stop right now. You were not ordinary. What you created with this person was not just another connection that came and went. You were different. You were different in a way that matters more than you currently understand. Let me show you exactly what you built. See, every person who has ever encountered an avoidant has a similar experience at first. They meet someone charming, energetic, someone who sweeps them off their feet with intensity and passion. And for a short time, it feels electric. But then the distance arrives, the silence, the pulling away. And most people, they do not stay long enough to figure out what is happening. They see the wall go up and they leave. They see the door close and they walk away. They do not have the patience to wait. They do not have the strength to hold space for someone who cannot explain what they are fighting. But you did. You stayed when staying made no sense. You held on when every rational thought told you to let go. You gave when you received nothing back. You showed up with consistency when the other person could only offer inconsistency. You gave your best days to someone who could only meet you with their worst ones. Why? Because you saw something they could not see in themselves. You saw the person underneath the walls, the human being underneath the armor, the heart that was beating so loud with fear and longing and hope that it had to build an entire fortress just to protect itself from breaking. And that vision you had of them, that belief that there was more inside than what they were showing you, that is what made you different. That is what made you dangerous to their entire system. You were the one person who refused to believe the performance, who looked past the rejection and saw the need beneath it, who understood that someone pulling away from you was not someone rejecting you. They were someone desperately trying to protect a wound that never got the chance to heal. You did not run when the performance showed up. You stayed and asked yourself what the performance was hiding. That is not something most people do. Most people take the rejection at face value. They accept the distance as a final answer. They walk away and convince themselves they dodged a bullet. But you stayed. And in staying, you became the only person who truly knew what was underneath. This is why your absence cuts them deeper than any absence ever has. Not because you were more attractive or more successful or more impressive, but because you were the proof that they were worth staying for. You were the living evidence that someone could see their darkness and choose to stay anyway. You were the single exception to every rule they built their life around. And now that exception is gone. They will meet other people. They will have other connections. But none of them will ever feel like you because none of them will look at them the way you did. None of them will wait the way you waited. None of them will love the way you loved. This is not romantic thinking. This is psychological reality. You raised the bar for what intimacy feels like. You showed them what it looks like when someone chooses to stay through the hard parts. And now every future connection will feel like it is missing something. Not because they will compare you constantly, but because your standard is now imprinted in their nervous system. They cannot unlearn what you taught them. They cannot forget what it felt like to be truly seen by someone who refused to give up. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all that denial and all those walls, they know this. They know you were the one they should have held on to. They know you were the exception their fear could not afford to lose. But here is what you need to understand about that knowledge. Their recognition of what they lost does not bring you back. Their regret does not undo the pain. Their eventual understanding does not repair what they broke. You gave them something rare and real. They could not receive it. That is their loss. That is their consequence. And it will find them in the quiet moments when no one is watching. But you get to walk away knowing that you loved with a depth most people never find. You get to carry the proof that you were capable of something extraordinary. And you get to know that the next person who deserves that love is already out there waiting for you. Your chapter is not closing, it is opening. And what comes next will make everything you went through worth.